Mr. Chairman. Hey, fine. How are you doing?
Jenkins, good luck. God bless you. I just left my meeting in that room. That's when he came down. I just go over and say hello to everybody.
Can you hold on for a second? We might have some more chairs.
Okay. We're going to withhold just a second. Good evening, everybody. We'd like to welcome you tonight to our Hendersonville Regional Planning Commission, and want to thank you for being here this evening. And as you can tell, we've got a very, very large crowd, and to that end, before we get going tonight, I'm going to ask our fire marshal to make a statement or two.
That's me. Okay, so obviously we're a little overcrowded. We don't want to push anybody out the door. Everybody has the right to be here, so we're going to make a determination before we get started. However, everybody's going to eat. Everybody on this side of the room goes back the way you came. Out those doors right through there. Everybody from here over, you go out that exit door or this door. If we have an emergency. Everybody on this side of the room goes out those two doors, make a hard left, and you're outside, okay? Everybody in this hallway, be respectful of each other. I know it's crowded out there, but we're going to have to keep the aisles open the best we can, and just leave in an orderly fashion. Don't panic if something happens. We'll call Calvary, okay? We got 5 chairs right up here.
Yeah.
And there's 6 of them right there. So please come take it.
Okay. Let me go ahead and just call this meeting to order for the Hendersonville Regional Planning Commission on Monday, July 10th. And once again, thank you for being here tonight. And I would like to note that we have all members present except for Key Bryant McCormick. So we do have a quorum of 8 members. And so we will declare that we have a quorum present. Before we get started tonight, let me just take a moment, as I did at last meeting, with these kind of crowds and with what we're going to be talking about tonight with this particular submittal. Obviously, everybody has an opinion, and we have 28 speakers tonight. And so, once again, when we get to that point in the meeting, what I really need to ask of you is that there be a level of civility. And we would ask that if you're on this list tonight to speak and someone else makes your points, we want to give you the right to speak if you would so desire, but you need to know that we will probably have already heard the comment. But you're welcome to speak if you'd like to. The other thing that I would like just to mention tonight is that in the process of what we're going to be discussing tonight, this is the first rung of it. It goes through the Planning Commission, and based upon the direction that this Planning Commission goes tonight, in the recommendation phase, when we get to that point, that will determine what happens next. It could possibly pass, go to the General Committee, and then go to BOMA, which there will be another hearing at the Board of Mayor and Aldermen. It could be rejected. We could recommend denial. And in that case, it stops for right now. Although the applicants would have the opportunity to go back and appeal to the Board of Mayor and Aldermen. The other part of that is that it could be deferred based upon the plan, based upon a variety of factors. So those are the 3 elements tonight that we will deal with. Once again, we do want to hear from everybody, and we're glad that you're here. But once we have heard from the staff, the applicant, and then from you, it will become then the property of this Planning Commission to begin to deliberate on that. And that's where we really need to have your civility and your help. And once again, I apologize that we don't have more seating in the room, and I thank our fire marshal for giving us some direction as to what we need to do in case of emergency. So with that being said, what I'd like to do, I'd like to draw all the planning commissioners' your attention rather, to the agenda tonight. And without objection, what I'd like to do is I'd like to call forward item number 8 on the first preliminary final development plan. This is a housekeeping item somewhat, and I'd like to do that. And then we will move directly to the consent agenda items, and we'll, of course, approve the minutes, and that'll put us back at the public hearing, which will take us right into the preliminary master development for Beatty Farms. So that's the way I'd like to proceed. Is there any objection to that? Okay, very good. All right, so having said that, I would like to call up item number 8, preliminary and final development plan for Indian Lake Center, Phase 1, Animal Hospital, owner Mitchell J. Gresham. Is the applicant here? Okay, all right. Staff, who's handling this one real quick? Timothy? Mr. Whitten? Suzanne, okay, go ahead, I'm sorry.
So you may be familiar with this plan development a few months ago requested a kennel use. The only permitted use in that shopping center right now is retail. A few years ago, you also approved a church. Most of that space is vacant now, and there is a vet clinic known as Easy Vet, which is a franchise wanting to occupy that space. I think that it's next to Preppy Pet.
Okay, so this would be an added use, but it would be a minor amendment. We already have the grooming use in there. So is that pretty much the gist of it?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Do we have any questions or comments from the commission? So moved. Moved by Ashley, second by Mr. Pinson. Any more discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Carries, so ordered unanimously. We'll now move to we'll go to item number 5, the minutes of June the 6th. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Millsap. Second by Mr. Bristol. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Carries unanimously. We have consent agenda items. Item number 6, Norman Creek Phase 1, Norman Creek Phase 2, Durham Farm Phase 2, Morris Orthodontics, Tire Discounters, Savannah Phase 8, Savannah Phase 9, and according to our agenda, the applicants agree with all staff comments. Move to group. Okay, we have a move to group and approve. Second by Ms. Stringfellow. All in favor of the motion to group, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That carries. Now we move to the main motion of all the consent agenda items. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, it's passed. All right, and that will bring us up to the public hearings for tonight. And we will take this in advisement. And so I'm going to start with a staff presentation here by Mr. Free.
All right, thank you, Chairman. All right, I'll just go through, for the commissioners and for the audience, I'll just go through a quick PowerPoint to hit some of the highlights of the Beatty Farm development and kind of talk about some of the things from the land use plan, transportation plan, and the zoning map that are involved in this particular parcel. The Beatty Farms development, this map, and it's maybe a little bit difficult to see, but where the little red circle is right there, that's roughly where the Beatty Farms property is. This map that we're looking at is our zoning map that has all the different classifications, commercial, residential, and industrial classifications. All of the yellow is in SR1. That's our basic residential zoning classification. And as you can see, and this also shows it a little bit closer, where the location of the Beatty Farms property is located. You can see most of both of the peninsulas are yellow, which are in that SR1 designation. And the applicant will be requesting to maintain that existing base zoning classification, but to get a planned development on top of that. This is just showing a little bit more specific. This little orange area is where the proposed development is located. This shows a little bit of the conceptual layout that the developer has presented to the commission for consideration. This is some of the plans, and they may have some boards and some things they want to discuss a little bit later, but an idea of some of the elevation plans that were submitted with the application. Also, one of the things that where the Indian Lake Road in our long-range transportation plan is to be connected down along East Drive in an intersection created down here. This has been in the transportation plan for some time. This right here is actually the old transportation plan. It's not the current. You can kind of see this little highlighted yellow area, and it's a little bit closer right there. Shows that proposed connection was in the old plan. This is our current up-to-date transportation plan, and you can see this little yellow area here, and then where you see this little dashed area is this is like Berry Hill, and then right here is East Drive. So you can see the roadway connection to connect up to Berry Hill to realign the connection with Indian Lake and East Drive has been in our transportation plan for some time. This also, Berry Hill is a planned development that was approved to the north of this property, and this area that's kind of highlighted in yellow, the designation of that roadway, the right-of-way, completion of that connection to realign India Lake Road down through there was included within that subdivision development as well. And that's just that's a little overview of the area. And one of the things is the area, as I talked about a little bit earlier, it's zoned SR1, and the applicant is proposing to change that to SR1 PD. Some of the things that are a little bit different in the SR1, you could create lots that were a minimum of 12,500 square foot. In the SR1 PD that they're proposing, you could go as low as 7,500 square feet on the lot size. Also, some of the differences versus the straight SR1 zoning and the SR1 PD zoning, if they developed it just straight SR1 as it's zoned right now, depending on the road configuration, probably the yield of lots with SR1 PD with the planned development is about 105. Probably they get maybe 12 or 15 lots less if they went straight SR1. One of the things is if they ended up going straight SR1, then some of the things with the building exteriors, with the percent of brick, with some of the issues with garages and the fronts of the homes, as well as the minimum requirement of 25% open space, those would not be requirements in just straight SR1 zoning classification. So those are just some of the differences with that. And then looking back years ago, the zoning before that was R15, which I believe at that time years ago that was a minimum of 15,000 square foot lots, but that was changed to the classification that we have now. But back then, you could do a planned development, and there wasn't really a limit on the lot size and some different things like that. So some things have changed. But I just wanted to give a quick overview of some of that, and I'll discuss some other things a little bit later in detail about the staff report.
All right, thank you, Mr. Free. I would entertain just a brief presentation. You're going to have a more ample time when we get to the discussion part, but from our applicant, if somebody would like to come up and make a presentation real quickly.
I'm just going to make a quick introduction.
Okay, if you would, just step up to the podium and introduce yourself and say hi to the camera.
I will make, where's the camera?
Yeah.
Somewhere.
I will make some brief introductions. I want to make sure everybody has a chance to speak and sit down. My name is Steve Hochulin. I am a principal with Gresham Smith and Associates. I'm going to real quick talk about us and our client, which is D.R. Horton, because in talking with a lot of the neighbors and people who have called me, It's come to my attention, a lot of people didn't know who exactly we were. Gresham Smith is ranked actually as the #1 ranked engineering and architecture firm in Middle Tennessee by the Nashville Business Journal. We're celebrating our 50th year, headquartered here in Nashville. Our client, D.R. Horton, started in 1978. They have been the largest home builder in the country for the past 15 straight years. And we're happy to do this. I have my presentations on a board. I know you have the ability to do it up there, but my apologies, I have Parkinson's, so when I use a laser pointer, it simply makes everybody dizzy. So I'm going to, since all these people took their time out of their schedule to talk, I want to make sure they have plenty of time to talk and talk a little bit more about the actual project as we, after they've had a chance to have their say. Is that okay?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, well, with that, we're going to begin with our public hearing. And once again, if you can, we would like for you to keep your comments within a 3 to 4 minute time span, please. And we don't try to cut people off, but once again, I think brevity will help us. We do have 28 speakers, and we're looking forward to your comments. First one will be Mr. Daniel Oliver, if you'll come, and please give us your name and your address.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Daniel Olivas, and I live at 132 Bayview Drive. I represent a group of residents that's got an email list that's about 80 strong, and one of our members circulated a petition, and we have, I think, 320 signatures on it. We're here to ask the Commission for 2 actions. The first is for you to recommend denial of the application. But in the event that you are considering or inclined to grant it, we'd like to ask you to defer it. Our group has appointed 2 speakers. I'm going to talk to you about denial, and my colleague, Ms. Jamie Johnson, is going to talk to you about deferral. Now, the first point I'd like to make is that our group understands that the Commission is not responsible for any applications that come to it. We understand that you are obligated by law to consider what you get, and no one in my group is angry at the Commission, and we appreciate that you have a very difficult and hard job to do. But we also understand that the builder has the burden of proof to demonstrate that the application and its planned development is complementary of the peninsula. And we understand that the peninsula has one big feature, and that is it's got a lot of room to breathe. And you can see that when you drive through it. The houses are spread apart. There's common areas, there's thickets, there's wooded spaces, and there's lots of individual space between all of that. Now, room to breathe is a real thing. It may be hard to quantify, but it is a real thing, and density kills it. And density gives in return more houses, more people, more traffic, a lot of stuff that ultimately degrades the quality of life that we enjoy here. And here's the other thing about density, is that once you go that route, it's gone, breathing room is gone forever. We won't be back here at any point saying, hey, look, we made a mistake, we're going to mow down some houses. That you get what you get. And we think that that's why the 2015 zoning ordinance included Section 8.8, which directs you to determine that the plan is in the public interest, and then it sets out some factors for you to consider. And among them is whether the planned development, and I'm quoting now, whether the planned development's reach for maximum possible density would be detrimental. And it's our position that that's exactly what it is here, that D.R. Horton is reaching for maximum density. In fact, more density than any other development that you see in your staff report and comments sheet that's in front of you. And it's doing that in a place where space, where room to breathe is one of our biggest assets. And moreover, D.R. Horton wants its maximum density, even though the current developments in Berry Hill and the Meadows are still underway. And though not in front of the Commission, there's another 38-acre parcel that was part of the sale, I understand, and obviously that's going to be developed at some point. And one of our concerns is, if the reach for maximum density is rewarded here, how would you ever reject it there? It strikes us that you're at a tipping point. And there's that old saying about the camel putting his nose under the tent and the show's over, and respectfully, we have a camel. And we think more than that it makes, in any event, it makes no sense for the Planning Commission to ever allow a builder to have maximum density here on this peninsula. It's never going to complement the peninsula. And it's not unreasonable for you to deny an application that doesn't complement the peninsula. And of course, that's your standard. Your standard is the reasonable standard. You can't unreasonably withhold granting an application, but you wouldn't be doing that here when it doesn't complement the peninsula. And look, we think this, that the city is in a very strong position here. It's obvious to everybody that the Beatty Farm is a nice piece of property. Is D.R. Horton going to walk away from the opportunity to build 80 homes there? Well, maybe, and if it does, then so be it. Because in preparation for tonight, I heard more than one city official say that there were other builders, good builders, who would jump at the chance to put 80 homes, build there under the current SR1 zoning. And so we urge you to deny the application because it's unreasonable and it's a grab for maximum density that's hostile to the peninsula. Now, as I started with, if you're inclined to grant the petition, we'd also like you to move for deferral. And that would give us an opportunity to consider the builder's submissions. It'll give us a chance to talk to some of you, to some of our aldermen, and to get our heads together and possibly put some suggestions on the table that would make it right by us. Now, Ms. Johnson is going to address those comments, and on my behalf, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Olivas. And okay, so, folks, once again, I need to ask that there be no response from the crowd. Please. No response. Please. Thank you very much. Jamie Johnson.
Good evening, Chairman and ladies and gentlemen of the Commission. My name is Jamie Johnson. My family and I live at 193 Meadow Lake Drive. In fact, we're neighbors to Mr. Olivas and his family. And I want to start by saying the reason that this crowd is reacting the way that they're reacting is because this is personal to us. This is where we live. This is where part of the community is moved in and is beginning to raise children, and where part of the community has lived their entire lives there and already raised their children. And regardless of whether this is given the nod this evening or not, this will affect all of us. So we would ask that if you are inclined to recommend that in fact the PUD be given the nod tonight, we ask that you consider deferring it. We have the understanding that you guys have the power to give us 30 days. The last meeting was 12 days ago, where there was a lot said and very little information given. We have had the opportunity in 12 days, while it's been a scramble, and much to the credit of Mr. Olivas, to get several email addresses and several people interested. And here's what we want. We're asking that if you're not willing to deny it tonight, give us 30 days to get the information that we're entitled to. And what that is we want to see a copy of the application. We'd like to see a copy of the plan, the entire plan. We've been given different amounts of information from different representatives. We've been told that it's been amended. We don't know if that's true. We would also ask for a copy of the traffic impact study. Again, we've been given some misinformation. Part of us were told that one was done and that it didn't have any effect on us, and the rest of us were told that there hasn't been one done yet. Regardless, we'd like to see it. We'd like to see every impact study, for that matter. We'd like to see the impact study done on schools. I would certainly hope that there had been one that's been done at this point. We want to know how it's going to affect the utilities, flooding zones. We want to know how it's going to affect our emergency responders. I mean, adding this many more homes certainly would affect the time responding to an emergency on our peninsula. We'd like to know what impact fees, if any, that the developer is going to bear. We don't have any of this information right now. We just have a lot of questions. We would ask that you would give us an opportunity to explore safety concerns. We've got individuals that have lived on this peninsula and have had the benefit of knowing that there's one way into their neighborhood and one way out, which we all know cuts down on burglary. We've got folks that are concerned about that. When you start adding in roadways, they have a right to be heard. We would ask for transparency. That's what we're here for. That's why all these people are in this room, crowded in the hallway, because we want information. Again, this is personal. This is where we live. This is where we're raising our children. And every time we get ready to leave our homes after the property value is affected, we will have to drive to church and work and the grocery and the bank and fight traffic. And it affects every one of us, no matter how long we've lived there. So we would ask that you give us the opportunity to gather this information. And we understand that tonight is when we have the most power. This meeting was started with an explanation of this being step one. And that's why we're all here. That's why emails and petitions have been started, so that people would understand that showing up tonight would make a difference. So we're asking you to let us be heard. Let us have our opportunity to see the information that affects every one of us, talk about it amongst ourselves, not simply be told what the plan is, but let us see the plan for ourselves. Let us talk about it with each other, talk about it with our representatives, and then come back on a different night and have this conversation again when we're equipped with the information that can give us the power to say, this is what we want if we're going to have to give up something. So for all those reasons, we would ask that if you're not willing to consider completely denying it and not giving it the nod for the vote, we would ask that you at least give us the 30 days.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. Appreciate that very much. Mr. Ames? Don Ames. Folks, please. Don Ames. Yeah.
Thank you very much. I could hardly hear what was going on. I was way down the hall. My name is Don Ames. I live at 107 Stones Throw, which is on the peninsula that we're talking about tonight. I understand that the property owner has the right to develop their property as residential. That's their right. The zoning that has been in place for many years. They are requesting to upzone to residential with a PD designation that would allow them more homes with smaller lots in trade for offering amenities such as green space. You have to decide if the amenities that they offer are sufficient to allow them the PD designation. But there is an issue that regardless of the designation allowed, that is critical to the approval of either plan, whether it's the straight residential or the residential with the PD. The Transportation and Land Use Plan that covers this tract of land has a new road or route that cuts through the property. It has an enormous impact on the flow of traffic on this peninsula. If not designed and executed properly, the route could become even more hazardous than the current traffic flow. In fairness to the developer, landowner, city, and residents of the peninsula, this infrastructure should be designed before a new zoning or plat is approved. It is critical to know how the northern part near Maple and Indian Lake will be designed, and how much it will cost and who's going to pay for it. As the new route travels through the current Berry Hill development, it will have to connect through Mr. Barrett's property. We don't own, the city doesn't own that property. Somehow or other, that property has to be obtained. We don't know what it's going to cost. We don't know if we have to take the property. We don't know what's going to have to happen in order to get that road completed. That needs to be decided. Can that property be obtained at what cost and who's going to pay for it? Does the city have a budget for that expense? Then most importantly, the southern connection is what is now a 90-degree bend in the road at East Drive, and whereas there's also the intersection of Trail East Drive. It must have it's going to be a very complicated design in order to get this accomplished. What is the cost of that? Who's going to pay for it? Who's going to build it? And what is this? Will the residents have the ability to see it and make sure that it's got a satisfactory resolution? The other thing is, as that road slashes through the new development, especially with the PD designation, there are many driveway cuts that go out onto that street. Is the street wide enough? Is it dangerous to have all of those driveways coming out? And we think it is, but that needs to be decided. So what I'm saying is, we don't always have to do this, but this is a case where I think it's important to have all of these questions answered, documented, decide who's going to pay for it and how it's going to be taken care of before we accept any plat, or especially before we agree to have an up zone to a PD. I hope that the developer will delay consideration for these reasons. But if not, of course, I hope that you all will do that for us, give everybody the ability to finish and decide how that extension of that road is going to happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ames. Just a note from the chair, we want to thank you for being here tonight, former planning commissioner, former alderman. Thank you for your words.
Thank you. It seems funny being over here.
Yeah. Always good to see you. Gregory Price.
Good evening. My name's Greg Price, and I live at 138 East Drive in Hendersonville, Tennessee. I moved up here in 1995 as a United States Marine, and I decided to stay here in 1997 when I retired because of the small town feel. A lot of the stuff I'm hearing here tonight is very important to me, and I'm also a mailman in this town. I've been a mailman since 1997, and I've seen the impact firsthand that the additional traffic has come in this town. We went from I believe like 25 city routes and 6 rural routes in 1997, and we now have 35 city routes and I think 12 rural routes. And that's an average of 1,000 people per route. And I'm out there every day on these small 2-lane roads, like Indian Lake, like Cherokee, dodging cars, watching cars almost hit each other head on. And it just sounds to me like we're just trying to exacerbate that problem now on our part of town, back in the area where we really haven't had that problem. I also would like to bring to your attention that I don't know if you realize that we have a real water problem there. Okay, we're the lowland. On our side of East Drive, around the corner, we're the lowland. So when you have rain, we flood. The city built a drainage ditch that they're not maintaining, and it's eroding, especially my neighbors, where her air conditioner sits is going to wash away. And Fred Thompson even told her back when he was in office that if they ever develop Beatty Farms, she's going to be underwater. And I wouldn't have believed that till I saw the flooding myself. I live right next door to her. And it's just, all that's just going to keep coming into our area here. And I don't know if the city commission also knows that we also have a real problem with sinkholes. And it runs all the way down the Meadow Lake. And if you drive by my yard, you'll see my driveway going under. You see the telephone pole going under. You see behind our house going under. And I cannot help but think that that water that's rushing down is doing that. And we build all these houses, that's going to cause more of a problem. And we might lose property because of it if we can't address. Now, they already know there's a problem. Okay, they already said they're going to build some type of a damming system to slow it down, and a water retention on the left-hand side. So why do you have to do all that? You only have to do that if you know there's going to be a problem. And it's going to be a big problem if y'all don't figure out a way to get that water out of there. And that's about all I got to say. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Mr. Price. Tom Harvey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My wife and I live at 108 Longview Ridge. I'll confine my remarks to things that haven't already been said, except to say that Mr. Ames's point about what the road's going to look like and who's going to build it and who's going to pay for it is, it seems to me, the cart is way ahead of the horse in this situation. And I think everybody needs to step back and take care of that problem before anybody wastes any more time on this sort of thing that threatens all of our homes. I've submitted to everyone a 3-page letter in writing. If I could respectfully ask you to read that when you have time. I thought you might rather see something on paper in addition to remarks. Let me mention just 2 or 3 things that haven't been touched on. One is the concept of planning itself has to do with trying to manage trends in a community. And your staff, of course, are experts in that. I was congratulating Fred on doing such a great job all these years. They know that, you know that, we're talking about trends. If we go to the building permit records in Hendersonville, you'll find two important trends. One, whether it's on Maple Drive, whether it's on Choctaw, whether it's on Meadowbrook, you're finding infill. You're finding vacant lots or even small homes being taken down, and you're going from either vacancy or a $200,000 small ranch into $500,000, $600,000, $700,000, $800,000 homes. They're beautiful. That's the trend of new construction on the peninsula. The trend of new construction on the peninsula, in other words, is the 180-degree opposite of what these folks want to do, to crowd everybody in and have cheap houses. That's not the trend. The other thing that you'll find by reading our own building permit records, all the permits are going to show that there are hundreds of expensive upgrades that have been made in the last 3 years to many of our homes all over the peninsula. Not just an extra light over the garage out back, I mean a lot of improvements. So the upgrading is the trend on the Indian Lake Peninsula, and it seems to me that if you look at the approach that you need to take toward a planned unit development, one of the things that you can be objective about is what the records show. Now, we're all here mad about it, but we're certainly being courteous, but you can be objective by looking at the building permit records. And the building permit records show what I've just said. It's a 180 trend in the Indian Lake Peninsula, and we ought to all thank heaven for it. Second point I want to make that I think has not been made is the seduction of open spaces. The most prudent, practical way to have open spaces in a section of a town is the way we have it in our Indian Lake Peninsula. They're privately owned. If I'm next to you, you've got your yard and green space, and you've got green space, and you've got green space, and I've got green space, and we all enjoy it, and it doesn't cost the taxpayers a penny. It doesn't cost the city any revenue. Nobody has to go to the public park that's going to be put into this planned unit development. Nobody's got to pick up the beer bottles. Nobody's got to cut the weeds. Nobody's got to police it. That's the common sense way to have open spaces. This idea that was presented by the gentleman at the June 28th meeting, he was quoted in the newspaper as saying the trade-off is more open space for more density. Well, I'm going to change the word density. That's a planning commission term. The ordinary folks term is crowding. You trade. Finally, I would like to mention one thing, and I always try to have a positive outlook. Never negative, but I think that all of these speakers ahead of me have referred to this as being a Rubicon. This is a big deal. If you can have this sort of crowding way back in the middle of the Indian Lake Peninsula, not on Central Pike in Mount Juliet, the busiest street in Nashville almost, but back in the middle of our neighborhood, if you can have this kind of cheek-by-jowl crowding, then the gradual condemnation of all of our property has begun. So I think there's a challenge with the Planning Commission and respectfully the Board of Mayor and Alderman. If we're going to go this route in Hendersonville, let alone in the Indian Lake Peninsula, you folks need to develop, with the help of the city fathers, a matrix or a formula for reducing our taxes. Because of the value of everything we own, it's going to start going down and down and down. So that's a preliminary that I submit respectfully to you that needs to be part of the planning for this type of revolutionary type thing. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Harvey. Next up is Ruth, and pardon me on the last name, Ruth W. Who is that? Faulkner. Okay, I'm so sorry. It's all, my reading's terrible right now, so you're okay. Ruth Faulkner.
I think the point has been made, but I just want to be sure that everybody thinks about it, and there has not been any mention of schools. The schools will not stand that. And that's really all I had to say, is just please think about this.
Thank you, Ms. Faulkner. The next person will be Charles Weist.
Mr. Jenkins and the committee, my questions are mainly to you, not to this developer. What is going to happen to Indian Lake Road and East Drive with all these extra cars? When are you going to widen these roads? When are you going to put in a bicycle lane? When are you going to add sidewalks and curbs like you've done over on Washington Place? I live 2 houses up from the man that spoke about drainage. I've had to replace part of my driveway because the water from that ditch he talks about came over my driveway during the 2010 flood. The city told me, engineer, oh, it's on private property, sir, that's your problem. No, you put it in, not me. The speed limit on Indian Lake Road and East Drive, 35 miles an hour. Why? It's a residential area. It should not be higher than 30. I've had, since I've lived in my house, 39 years, at least 10 cars in my front yard because of speed. What do they do about it? Nothing. Now you're going to add more cars on Indian Lake Road and East Drive. I was told they're going to put a 4-way stop there at East Drive and Point of View with the new street coming out. I'm not never going to be able to get out of my driveway because it's going to be blocked up all the way down to Indian Lake Elementary School. Who's going to pay for this? Are these developers ever give the city any money for widening roads? No, all they want is the extra cash to sell houses. And it's just like that lady was saying, don't forget, all these houses are going to have children. Who's going to pay for the extra schools we're going to need? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Weiss.
Sir, could you state your address? Please,
Mr. Weiss, what the address?
Could you state your address?
134 East Drive.
Alrighty, great, thank you.
Yeah. Douglas Busoni, or Pisani? If you would, just state your name and the address for the record.
My name is Douglas Busoni. I live on 104 Cheyenne Drive. I'd like to pose a rhetorical question to you, the commission, and to you, my neighbors. Why have zoning laws at all? Why do we have them? The answer is simple. It's for our protection. It's for your protection. It's for our protection. And when we come around and change these laws or change the zoning, we're losing our protection. When we buy a house, we check for the zoning. We don't want to buy a house that's going to have a shopping mall built next to it. And we don't want when we didn't buy our houses in this neighborhood to have a high-density housing market there. So I would just like to say, yes, we have the laws written so we can change it, but it takes away our safety and our property values. Thank you for allowing me to speak.
Thank you. Next up is Lorry Higden. If you would, just state your name and your address for the record.
Lorry Higden, 136 East Drive. I live between the two gentlemen that have already spoke. And the drainage is a problem because my house, Fred Thompson told me, and his city engineer, that when they build on Beatty's land, you will be 6 foot underwater. And he's right. That drainage ditch that the city dug along our property is now within just about a foot of my air conditioning system. We already lost one air conditioning system to the water. So when my husband, we replaced it 10 years ago, he put it, or 15 years ago, he put it up on blocks to get it away from there. Well, now the erosion is bringing it to the point where the blocks are, and it's all going in there. And the city refuses to come out and fix it, but they fixed it other places, like over on Island Drive. They have done a really pretty thing where they've widened it and put in cement so the water could flow, but they won't do that for us over here, and I don't know why. And it's a mess. And as it is, when it rains, water comes over East Drive, floods my property. It's a mess. And I ask all of you to put yourself in my position. Come out and look at my land and see what's happening there before you let anything else go on down here. When they put in Ballantrae, that was the beginning of the end, because that's when it started coming over the East Drive. Even though they dug another ditch on the other side of the road, that property is higher. I sit low. I am the third house that you come around that curve. And that's where all the water lays. Mr. Weiss, yeah, he lost his driveway, but I'll lose the whole end of my house. And it's awful. And I'm widowed now, and I can't afford to put more and more money into a drainage ditch that I never put there in the beginning. It wasn't there. And they put that there to tie it into the original drainage ditch that was about 8 houses down that flows to the lake. But they decided, because it was getting flooded over here, that they would dig this, but they didn't ever maintain it. And now they tell us, the city tells us, well, it's your fault, it's your problem. It isn't our problem. It is your problem, and it needs to be fixed. And you can't put in more houses and allow the existing people to be underwater. That's just not morally right, and I don't believe it's legally right. And I have another concern. What are you going to do about the deer? My God, people, I have one in my backyard right now with a broken leg. Got hit by a car coming across East Drive. I mean, they're eating our flowers, our bushes. They're a menace. They're in my garage when I open the door. I mean, I could just let them come in the house, I suppose, but something needs to be done. And I'm not, you know, my family has been in construction my whole life, so I understand about making money, and I don't have a problem with that. But I do have a problem with you putting the people that are already there at risk. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Higden. Judy Pillar. Judy Pillar.
Pardon me?
Judy.
Lori?
Okay, thank you very much. Sorry. Austin Barrett. Or is it Andy?
It's Austin.
Austin.
He may be here, but he's always late.
Okay.
You don't believe that, do you?
If you would, introduce yourself and your address. Thank you.
Yeah, Austin Barrett, 115 Glen Levin Way. I'm not going to belabor what everyone has already said, their concerns about the drainage, about the schools, the traffic. That's all a real problem. But I'm a bit concerned because I was traveling out of town up in Upper Michigan when the prior meeting occurred, and it was brought to my attention that the developer, when asked about the connector road, he said, "I'm not worried about it. The city's going to take care of that." Well, the concern is that's my family's property, and no one has come to him yet to talk to him about how that road should be configured or how he's going to be compensated for that road. And so I just think someone might want to reach out to him between now and, whether it get deferred or delayed. Someone talk to him about how that's going to occur. We're both astute real estate professionals. We get it. But I'd also expect that as a commission, you would proffer the developer for that fee or for that compensation in some way. That's how it's done. And I would want to know that ahead of time. So that's all I ask, is that you would reach out to him, whether it be the SR1 or the PUD or what have you, that someone reach out to him and let him know what's going on. He's sometimes hard of hearing, but, you can get him on the phone. He's a reasonable guy. So I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Mr. Barrett.
Thank you.
Is Andy here? Okay.
He may be, but I don't know that he's going to speak.
Okay. Mike Leeson.
My points have been made already.
Thank you. Alderman Brown, Steve Brown.
Did you read the other statement?
I can. I'll do it right after you. Have you got it?
I have.
Okay, thank you very much.
I'm Steve Brown. I live at 110 Meadow Lane. I'm a resident of Ward 4. I'm also one of the aldermen of Ward 4. My colleague, Andy Gilley, who's the other alderman of Ward 4, is out of town tonight in Atlanta, but he has sent a statement that I'm going to read on his behalf, and I'm going to add my comments to it. The Beatty property is a piece of property that is very dear to the hearts of many that live on Indian Lake Peninsula. It is our last major undeveloped piece of property in Ward 4. It is with great care and concern that many citizens, elected officials, city staff, property owners, and developers have discussed this property over the last few years, and especially over the past few weeks. Before you tonight is a request to rezone the property to higher density. After main discussions with city staff, with citizens, with the property owner, and after hearing comments at the community meeting 2 weeks ago, I can tell you that it is my hope as one of the aldermen in Ward 4 that you will deny this rezoning request. I've had more phone calls and emails regarding this issue than any other issue since I've been in office since last November. I have not had one citizen tell me they were in favor of the rezoning issue. We are all aware that land could be built on today as it is zoned. We can't stop, nor would we want to stop progress. However, one common theme from when I was campaigning was a strong desire for our community to manage growth better. We don't need to stop growth altogether, but we do, I think he misspelled a word, and he's a school teacher. But we've got to manage it properly. You can tell him I said that. He's probably going to watch this. Rezoning this property to higher density would not be properly managing growth. It is my hope that the property owners and/or developer will work with the city to come up with the best use of this property, whatever that may be going forward. But for the citizens of Ward 4, this plan, which requires rezoning, in my opinion, is not the best plan. The Beatty property is a special piece of land to many people. However, Hendersonville as a whole city is a special place for all of us. This is a decision that affects our whole city, and I thank you for taking everyone's thoughts, concerns into account when making your decision. Respectfully, Andy Gilley, Alderman Ward 4. Now, I won't quite be that eloquent, but I agree with everything that Andy said. I know I've had probably somewhere between 80 and 100 emails, texts, and phone calls. I've not had anyone in favor of rezoning this property. So I would respectfully request that you consider a no vote on rezoning. But what I also would respectfully request that no matter what your vote is, that you do absolute due diligence on every piece of this particular issue. Specifically, the intersection that I've heard talked about, the intersection I'm concerned about. I don't travel that every day, but I certainly can't get it in mind how that would work, but I'm not an engineer. So, but I do know that's a major concern. I also have heard a lot of people talk about back-loaded garages, not front-loaded garages. Now, I understand as a group of commissioners you have some hard decisions to make, and I respect you for them, because I sit in the same seat that Frank Pinson's sitting in right now every other week and have those decisions. I hope you get this one made before it comes to me and Mr. Gilly to make that decision. But I'll respect your decision. I ask you to please do your due diligence, and I will tell you that both your aldermen representing Ward 4 would prefer that you do not rezone this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Danny Walters. Danny Walters.
Mr. Chairman and members of the commission, thanks for the opportunity to come
If you
forward.
would, just introduce yourself.
Oh,
and
I'm so sorry. Danny Walters, 105 High Point Anchorage. I'm down in Cherokee.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for the opportunity to speak. I don't know how much more I can add to my neighbors. Mr. Oliver especially covered most of the big bullet points, and I'm not going to belabor the points. I do think it's important that this property be developed in absolute harmony with the rest of the peninsula. I am going to reiterate that the flavor of the Indian Lake Peninsula is what drew me here. It's what drawn my neighbors here. It's what we enjoy on a daily basis. To somehow think that you can pack 105 homes onto 35 acres and not have a negative impact on that flavor and that feel of the peninsula is unreasonable to me. I don't think you're going to be able to put potentially 100, 150 cars up Indian Lake Road. And I've read the staff report and comments where the road commission or road engineer talked about 2% impact. 2% impact. I don't think there was any accounting for time. That entire 2% is going to happen between 7 and about 8:30 in the morning. Anybody got a middle schooler dropping off at Ellis Middle School? I've had 2 of them. To somehow think you're going to add 100 cars to that. I mean, I'll do some quick mental math for you, and I'll be quick because I know there's a lot of people who want to talk. Let's assume that this builds out to 80 homes. Let's assume for the moment that either going to work or dropping off to middle school is going to generate somewhere around 100 cars. That's a nice round number. 100 cars at some reasonable amount of spacing, 25 feet each. It's close to a half a mile of cars. How far is that? Well, anybody that's dropped off at Ellis Middle School knows that there's times where Ellis Middle School will back up through past Nannyberry. So we're going to say to about Sequoia. Let's be real. Let's say about Sequoia. A half a mile will put you at Maple Drive. That's that many more, and that's at the minimum build out that they're talking about. Now, some of those cars I realize are going to go out off Cherokee. So it's not going to be the whole 100 cars. If this builds up to 105, what's the daily count? 120, 125, 130, 140? You're talking about a half to 3/4 of a mile of cars that are stacked into this. Now, I realize there's a plan for development of Indian Lake Road, which I'm assuming is going to be widening in a turn lane. But it's still going to be traversing school zones. You cannot get off the peninsula without going through a school zone. And so all the traffic management in the world is going to stop dead at 20 miles an hour. Except, of course, for the people that don't think it applies to them. That if you had a center turn lane there at Nannyberry and at Ellis Middle School and HHS, you're going to have a through lane. They're going to have to stop at the traffic guard, assuming they're not doing 35 miles an hour down through there. So I think you need to consider that as a part of this whole total package. And I'm not going to take up any more of your time, but I want to stand in opposition tonight, and I want to recommend denial of the zoning request. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Walters. Wanda Becker. Wanda Becker.
I'm Wanda Becker, and I live at 103 Woodvale Drive. I have lived in Hendersonville at my current location for 33 years and raised 3 daughters, and have enjoyed everything that Hendersonville has offered, whether it be sports, wonderful schools, and yes, the green space. I am concerned about traffic. I am concerned about the school. I am concerned about the water that the people have talked about on East Drive. If you ever go by there after a hard rain, these poor people really do have their land eroded and probably have foundation issues. If they don't now, they will soon. And I do not think that we need this kind of a high-density homes there. I oppose it. I think it's not infitting. Like some of the other people said, it does not complement our area at all. And also the deer. I live back at the back of Peninsula. Sometimes I see 15 deer. I can go to Cades Cove and can't see that many deer. You know, my husband has said, let's put up a gate and charge admission because we have so many deer. And there have been neighbors that have given up on daylilies and hostas. I have to buy deer off and spray frequently. I went out the other night and there were 7 deer across the road. So why don't we address some of those issues that we have now and stop worrying about compounding our problems that we have? I do not believe high-density housing in that area will help us at all, and the traffic will be a nightmare, and then we're really stuck with it, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Jeff Cundiff. Here he is. Thank you. If you would just repeat your name and your address. Thank you for the record.
Hello, I'm Jeff Cundiff. I live at 108 Hedgelawn Drive. Been here since 1986. I've had the opportunity to review the proposed plan, and I wanted to point out a few of the items that just for y'all to consider as you're making your decisions here tonight. The plan, as you see it tonight, is proposing for higher density in lieu of granting open space for the community. If you'll look at the overall plan as they had up on the board, the open space has been set aside for the community is also the same open space that they're programming for their detention pond. So keep that in mind when you're thinking about what you're trading off there. I'm not opposed to development of this property. I think it'll be a good thing for the community. It'll be a good asset to everybody if it's done right and it's done with sound engineering principles. I've had an opportunity to look at the transportation plan for the community, and some of the recommendations within inside of the proposal are inconsistent with what the city has put forth relative to an arterial road going through the property versus a collector as they've designed, as they've called it out. They are also proposing at this time to put a 4-way stop in there at the sharp bend, which we've all driven many times. And depending on how that all plays out, one thing that definitely needs to be considered is the sight distance there. There's a lot of safety concerns. These stretches of road receive higher averages of crashes than the TDOT averages. This development is defining where the road's going to go. The city needs time to plan the road out appropriately, wherever it may go, so that we as a community all benefit from it and the development gets what they need at the end of the day. The horizontal alignment should be considered as it goes through the bend there. As you see it going through, that's a very sharp turn similar to what we have today, along with the increased trips coming from each direction and the connections to the greater community. I second a lot of the things that have been said and what Don Ames has said, and I will point out that in the transportation plan, collector streets are supposed to, you got local streets, they're supposed to pick up the houses, and you got collector streets to pick up those streets, and then they go to arterials. This is technically classified as arterial, and arterials are only supposed to have connections, every 1,500 to 3,000 feet. And I see a lot of driveways. I see some back of homes on major roads. Just several items to be considered as you review this proposal in front of you. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Robert, is it Dordain or Dordine? I probably murdered that, but I'm sorry. If you would, just name and address.
My name is Robert Doradine. I'm at 121 Lake Vista Drive. I agree with everything that's been said, but one thing I want to bring up is life safety. I'd like to see a report done by the fire department. It takes me 15 minutes from my home to Gallatin Road every day just to make it that far. The last 10 years, it's gotten worse because of Berry Hill and some other developments. So I'd like to see from the fire department and the police department, what's going to be the time delay by adding a new subdivision? I think that's going to cause a life safety issue, trying to get to the hospital if somebody needs to from back where I'm at. That's all I really have to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ernest Heeks? Ernest Heeks? Well, you don't have to. But you're already walking, so let's go ahead and do it. You would just introduce yourself and your address.
My name's Ernest Heeks. I live at 306 Cherokee Road, Hendersonville. And I'll go along with pretty much everything that's been said tonight. I'm from England, and they have what they call green belts. Every big city's got a belt of green around it, and you can't build on that. And I want to know why the city cannot put in more green space instead of building more and more houses. This would be a prime opportunity for green space. And it wouldn't be any real cost to the city. You can get a farmer to come in and cut the hay and make hay out of it. And this would be ideal, I think, not necessarily a park, but just green space that we can all enjoy for generations to come. Because once you build on it, that's it, folks. It's no longer there. And this is the only tract of land now on our peninsula. And I've lived here since 1970. So thank you.
Thank you. Mary Heeks, are you going to speak? No? Okay. Let's see here. Father Jeff Jones. Is he here? I know Father Jones. Okay. Is he out there in the hallway? Okay. There you are. Were you in prayer about this? If you would, just introduce yourself and your address. Good to see you.
Hi, I'm Father Jeff Jones, 122 Valley Brook Drive. I've lived here 12 years, and I'll have to tell you the Beatty Farm, driving past it to go home, is a lovely sight. It's a great view driving in and driving out. But being at 122 Valley Brook Drive, I've also noticed that it takes quite a while to get out of the peninsula and to get back into town. And I've noticed the schools during the year when the school year is running, we have a hard time with traffic there. At every one of them, there's 3 there. We've got to remember that. And when we're trying to get out, those emergency vehicles that try to get in are having a difficult time as well. They have to. So safety, which has already been addressed, is the main issue that I have. I think being good stewards of all things that have been given to us is, we really need to weigh on that for a while. And I just ask everyone to really slow down, to be fair in it all, for people who have invested their life in having a wonderful home with beautiful views and investing in that, raising their families there, thinking about what that's going to look like in the future for their families who will inherit it. And now it's going to change. So if we're going to change it, it needs to be slow. And it needs to facilitate the needs of the people. That would be being a good steward. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. J.R. Horton? J.R. Horton? Coming? Okay. If you would, just introduce yourself and your address. Thank you.
I am J.R. Horton. I live at 100 Hidden Lake Court, and I guess
First thing is say I'm not related to the D.R. Horton. I did move here from Dallas many years ago, but also not related to any Hortons that have been employed by the city of Hendersonville. So please don't hold that against me. There's been a lot of excellent points made tonight, and I think that one thing we have to realize is that it's all really going to be left into your hands, and we have to trust that you guys are going to do what's best. We've given you a lot of things to think about. I think it's Alderman Brown reading the letter or the note from Alderman Gillig. They are the two aldermen from the area that's where the development is planned. I think that their message was really strong for the two of them to come out together and ask for a no vote. I think it says a lot about what the residents in the area feels. Now, whether that is what's best for the city, I have my opinion. You guys are the board, right? But I do have a couple other things I'd like to address or ask, and one is with all of the growth that's happening in Hendersonville, does the city have the manpower or the wherewithal to keep everything, all the codes built? I mean, all the houses built to code. There seems to be an enormous number of houses. I don't know how many houses per inspector is the general rule, but I've seen a lot of houses built in this area that were probably not up to standard code. And I know the code changes a lot, almost every year or every other year. The last thing that I'd like to say is I found it kind of ironic that we're speaking about the density, and I still don't understand how you can have more density and more space at the same time. I'm a little confused on that, but maybe if you squeeze it into something, I don't know, it doesn't work for me, but my math is simple math. Thank you.
Thank you. David Grover. If you would just give us your name and your address. Thank you.
Yeah, my name is David Grover. I live at 190 Berrywood. Recent owner of property here. We bought in December. We rented for 2 years at, I think probably the other planned development that you did at Vintage Knoll. And I would invite anybody to really take a look at that a few years down the road as to the transient nature of that, the number of rentals that are in there, the number of issues that we have with the police department that is there, or that we had there. That's part of the reason why we moved. And part of the reason we bought on Berrywood was because of that nature and the feel of that part of Hendersonville. I can live anywhere in the country. I chose this town. And it's important to me. It's important for my children. There's not just 3 schools on the one end, there's another school on the other end. And my wife is a crossing guard there and deals with the traffic as it currently exists, let alone what it could become. I'm a former civil engineer with the Navy. I was a city engineer in Illinois, and I would recommend highly to deny this. If you're not going to deny it, you need to defer it. People need to take a look at this. Take a look at your builder. It's a builder that we wouldn't allow in my city. You need to understand what you're buying. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Lee Peterson. Lee Peterson. Lee Peterson. Is he here or she? Lee? Okay, I don't see Mr. Is this it? Okay, I don't see Mr. Peterson. So not seeing Mr. Peterson, that was the last speaker, so I'm going to declare that this public hearing is closed. And we're going to move on now to item number 8 and the preliminary and final development plans for the Beatty Farms. Now, with this aspect of the commission meeting, We are now going to take this up as a commission, and we will ask questions of our staff, we'll ask questions of our developer, and we will see where this goes. So, once again, thank you for helping us in this hearing. Thank you for your civility. Thank you for that. And now, let us do what we need to do here, and hopefully, we'll move through this expeditiously. Thank you very much. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Freed to go on and give us further remarks about this preliminary final development plan, and then the developer, if you'd be prepared, and then commissioners, we will wade right into this. Mr. Freed.
Thank you, Chairman. Get that, is that on? Yeah. I'm going to go over just a couple of things to consider. The developer has agreed with the majority of the staff comments. I think there were two specifically that were not agreed upon. A few issues on looking at the proposed development, looking at specifically item number 4 in the staff comments, where we're talking about front entry garages that are proposed for the development.
Excuse me, Mr.
yes.
Chairman. Wish to be recognized.
Okay, Mr. Bristol.
Okay. I think in full disclosure of the matter at hand, I think it should be known that I do have a working relationship with the owner of this property, and not to present any type of conjecture, conflicts of interest to this body and to the citizens of Hendersonville, I'm going to recuse myself from the vote to rezone this property, and I'll just recuse myself from this point forward.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bristol, for letting us know that. Mr. Pinson?
I too have an issue with, very similar to what Mark just mentioned, and in light of that, I too will recuse myself.
Thank you very much. Okay, Mr. Free, continue on.
And looking at, we did have specific requirements for SR1 plan developments as it relates to the exterior of buildings and open space and different things like that. But one of the specific things that section 12.2E2 of the zoning ordinance lays out for us to consider is looking at the way garages are placed upon the front of properties. And it gives you the flexibility if you're doing a planned development. There's some different options that are at the discretion of the commission to consider. But some of the things that, in looking at it, that you need an appropriate combination of equivalencies when you're looking at front-loaded garages with a planned development. And some of those things are listed there. You can see the A, B, C, and D. Some of those are limiting front-loaded garages. Also, a combination of instead of having double garage doors, maybe having two single garage doors. That's one of the things in order to mitigate some of those things. Also, looking at the possibility of recessing garages by 10 foot back from the front of the property. That's something the commission has done as well, or a combination of all of those different things. And that's just one thing I needed to point out to the commission on this item number 4 was that the development is proposing almost 100% of the garage doors to be front-loaded. They are a more enhanced garage door as far as the quality and the appearance, but they don't have any. They're not recessed substantially, and the visuals that we saw with the elevations just had the double wide garage doors. That's one specific issue. Another issue that the developer agreed to all of the different items, but I just wanted to point out the issue in number 5 where it talks about that the proposed density of this development is 3 units an acre. Looking at surrounding developments and kind of taking that into account, they range from 1.43 units an acre, dwelling units an acre, to 2.74. So at 3, this would be substantially higher than any other development. You can look just to the north where the Berry Hill development is, and there is a little bit more compact development there, and that actually is roughly at about a little bit over 4 units of an acre. But it's a part of the larger Berry Hill development. It wasn't approved, standalone on 4 units an acre. It was looked at on that whole thing. Another issue that the developer did agree, and I just might point out, is that on item number 6, to get a pretty good conceptual idea of what this intersection at East Drive and Trail East Drive and the extension of Berry Hill Drive, how that would function, understanding that it may take more engineering work to get to the very, very specifics, but at least have something conceptual that we could see what those were. Also, I might note on item number 7, just about the setbacks of the homes, especially along the Berry Hill Drive area, trying to do a combination of something that would set those homes back far enough so that people weren't backing out of driveways, whether that would be side-loaded garages or setting the homes back far enough where you had an opportunity to maybe turn around instead of backing out onto the Berry Hill Drive extension. And that was just some of the items that I just wanted to point out as you're considering this proposal.
Thank you, Mr. Free. This time we'll hear from the developer.
You're going to have to give me just a minute. The architects like to use it because it looks cute. But they were supposed to non-functional. Control all these roads. So I'd like to
We may need to get somebody to handle that portion because we're going to need you up at the microphone.
I appreciate that.
So maybe get one of your colleagues to help you with the moving if there has to be moving.
So, real quick, what I'd like to do is walk through a little bit of this and some of what was done and why it was done. And going off of the staff comments, we met ahead of time before we did anything. We realized that we could do this under the straight SR1 zoning. We would not have to deal with some of the architectural guidelines. We would not have to deal with the open space. We would get a few less lots. We're probably 12 to 15 lots different is what we're talking about, or a little less than half a dwelling unit an acre, about 4/10 of a dwelling unit an acre difference. There were several things that we were asked to do as part of this. One is we were made aware, and we knew that that Berry Hill was on your major thoroughfare plan, or whatever it decided to be called. We thought Berry Hill, why not? Let's just continue it. We were asked as much as possible to keep it on one piece of property. We actually thought that was a good idea. It has a tendency, if we put some curves in, to slow down traffic. We were made aware that there were some off-site drainage issues in the area south and southwest of this property. And so we also started spending time in Hendersonville, coming to council meetings and things before my client, D.R. Horton, even looked at this particular piece of property, trying to get a feel for the community. And one of the things we found that we liked about Hendersonville was a great sense of community and a great sense of neighborhoods. So what we've tried to do, and again, as I'm just pointing this out to let you know that we do have the experience, between D.R. Horton, between myself, we've worked on the planning, design, and building of over 1 million single-family lots and homes. One of the things that we found as we go through that process is there are some things that work well and there are some things that do not work as well. One of the things that we wanted to do when we did this was to get back to a subdivision that had a real feel of community. We wanted things to happen in the front yards. We wanted people to know their neighbors. We wanted to get away from the feeling where somebody drives into their garage, goes into the backyard, and doesn't know anybody. So we've done some things on purpose here. One, there are sidewalks on all of these streets. There are street trees in the greenway on all of these streets in front of each of these homes. That's done because street trees have a demonstrated ability to slow down traffic and to give a feeling of protection for people in the front yards and on the sidewalks and things like that. The only street that does not have a sidewalk per se is what would be on the west side of Berry Hill. And as opposed to a sidewalk, we've actually put in an 8-foot wide multi-use trail. That was done for a couple of reasons. We wanted to, in effect, have a super sidewalk. In order to make sure that traffic did not go too fast, in addition to the curves and in addition to the street trees, that was done to allow us to take bikes off the street and make that street feel just a little bit narrower, because that also works at slowing things down. One of the comments was to spread things out and move the homes back on Berry Hill Drive. We have done that, so the homes on the south and west side of Berry Hill Drive, for the most part, are set back about 55 feet. We have a very wide 22-foot parkway in addition to that 8-foot multi-use trail. We did that for drainage reasons. So we were made aware of the problems with drainage. We put in, it's not just a greenway, it will be a landscaped, it will be a swale. It's designed to catch, hold, and slow down water. We put it there so that it would be an HOA maintenance responsibility, not a city maintenance responsibility. We have some ability, it works better when we put it all in one place, but we have some ability to switch some of that to the other side of the road. The problem with that is it would require that curve, if you will, in the road to be slightly below the city's minimum standard. So we would need to work with the city if you wanted to transfer a few feet to the other side. Right now, the homes on the north and east side of Berry Hill are about 37 feet set back from the edge of the pavement. The ones on the west side are 55 feet back from the edge of pavement. So we could make that a little wider. We would just need special dispensation, if you will. This has been designed to try to catch and hold and slow down the water. It's not going to be designed to make anything worse. It may actually improve things off-site. That's what has been requested by staff, and that's what we have committed to. We do know there will need to be some engineering work, and that the developer will need to pay for the engineering work and the construction work at that intersection. It is very difficult to design an intersection when I don't know exactly where the streets are going to come in, and that comes back to this approval and this layout. As I said, we can go through and put in 90 and not have that stuff, but we're doing this. Now I want to talk a little bit about the homes. As I said, we've set everything back on purpose. We've made all the garage doors, architectural level garage doors. We did that to try to get people into their front yards and giving them bigger front yards and having them spend more time in their front yards. We've also found through all of that work and all those subdivisions and all those lots that one of the unintended consequences of putting garages in the rear of a lot or even in the side of a lot is, well, unfortunately what you don't see you don't necessarily maintain. So front yard landscaping does not get as well maintained on average. There's always somebody who's very good, there's always somebody who's very bad no matter what. They don't get maintained as well on average when you're not having to look at it as you come in and day out. We almost all have a junk drawer or spare room or attic or garage where it's kind of out of sight, out of mind. In the case of my father, it's all of the above, but we won't go there. And so that's been done on purpose. We are trying to make this a very nice community. We have been very careful with where we put the parks. Let me actually switch to the next one. Wow.
If you would, we're going to need you to step over to the mic. You can point. Thank you very much.
So we're looking at street trees, we're looking at sidewalks throughout the whole thing. We have designed 3 parks and have been very careful with what we did and where we put them. We have one park that is just to the north of the road that comes in off of Indian School. That is a quiet park because it happens to abut a neighboring property to the north. Across the street on the south side is a child's play park, which connects to our bigger park that also serves to help control some of the stormwater and stormwater runoff and try to make things better, especially to the southwest of our property. Now, I'd like to talk a little bit about some of the homes and what's being planned to go in here. I'm not going to argue with anybody, but I think some people have perhaps given D.R. Horton a bad reputation. First of all, right now, our request says the minimum lot size will be 7,500. We put that in because that is the minimum on your ordinance. Right now, none of the lots shown are less than 7,800, and they go up to almost 13,000 square feet. The reason we say a minimum of 75 is I know when we get down to the actual engineering, and especially a couple of the neighbors in Berry Hill have indicated that there's a couple of trees they're very fond of, we may have to cut a corner or something to save a tree. I want to make sure that we don't say something and then, miss it by 50 feet. So they will all be over that. Right now, they're all between 7,800 and 13,000. The homes that will be built will range from probably 2,000 to over 3,300 square feet. The intent is that they will be, again, it says at least 75% brick and stone. Many of them will be all brick and stone. The only thing that will be not brick and stone is if we put in some masonry siding in order to add color. Even brick and stone sometimes gets a little boring. And that will never exceed 25% on any of the homes. Right now, our best projection, and all this comes down to what it costs to build everything out, these homes will start at probably $350,000 and go north of $400,000. So these are nice homes in keeping with everything that is in the area and in serving as kind of a transition through that area. So I just wanted to point those out. There was one other thing that I want to point out specifically for the fire marshal. He had an indication he felt the cul-de-sac was too small. We want to work with the fire marshal. I am particularly sensitive. Literally was with a company that got sued for doing a cul-de-sac the size the city and the fire marshal asked for when somebody went around the cul-de-sac too fast and hit a little child on a bike. And we were sued because we should have known, even though that's what was required, we should have fought harder. We are going to do this as to whatever is going to be safe. And if that's really what the fire marshal is convinced, we have room to expand that, the extra feet. We will commit to that to make it right. We're also going to do the intention, there will be landscaping all the way around. It will be a combination of evergreens, flowering trees, and basically a white, I believe you asked for plastic because of maintenance, or a white PVC fence.
Okay.
Or we could do a different color. Somehow I had in mind, these nice, these nice white fences around the Kentucky horse farms. If there is a different color, we are certainly open to other colors. So I just wanted to walk through some of those things so that you understood kind of what we were actually asking for, and I'd love to answer any questions of the Planning Commission.
Thank you very much. I'm going to start out, and then I know other commissioners would like to weigh in on this. Let me let me first of all just clarify, you're now saying that you're agreeing with comment number 3 on the fire department, and that you're okay with, because if they say it, you're going to do it, probably.
I would love to talk to the fire marshal as we design it, but yes, if that's what, I will certainly agree to that.
Okay, and then let's also talk a little bit about comment, Mr. Free mentioned this, and, frankly, I'll just be honest, on the garage doors and recess entries and those types of things, we have worked long and hard with many other subdivisions. And just, this is my point of view, but I would see no reason to veer from what we have done in the past with respect to what we're asking for garage entries. That is, of course, contingent upon what's already codified. So that's just my viewpoint. Now, I do want to ask a question. Some of the concerns that were mentioned, and you did allude to some engineering, but maybe I could get Mr. Free to weigh in, or maybe Marshall. I want to talk a little bit about, on commissioners, if you're looking at your staff report with respect to Beatty Farms, this will be on I guess it would be page 2 in the paragraph beginning the addition of 105 homes. And it mentions that the city is secured, and I want to be clear about this, and maybe either Mr. Free or Mr. Marshall could weigh in on this, because this goes to if this plan were to go forward. This goes to how we're going to affix pricing for these lots, because of the what they will cost. In the report, it says the total estimated project, and somebody asked about this in the comments, in the staff, in the hearing, I'm sorry. 7.5 million is the estimated project cost for the improvements to Indian Lake Road from Maine to Sequoia. And $6 million, that's federal, 1.5 is a local share. Of course, Beatty Farm Development participated in the sharing in the cost of that local share of the 1.5 for this improvement. And then, of course, we're talking about the fees here. I want to be clear, you're in agreement with that? You're in agreement with that 1.5 million in the sharing of that cost?
My understanding is that this development would be paying a portion of that 1.5.
Right.
Not the 1.5.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I'm asking you.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure, yes.
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much. Other thing I would just note, and then I will open it up for other commissioners. I think in the day, I think I might have presided over the Berry Hill hearings as well, back in several years ago. But just from my point of view, it's a beautiful piece of property. I used to live back there myself, but it does appear that we are proposing continuing going up in density. And the question being, of course, you've got some density already at I believe it was 2.74, and then the lowest was, I believe, 1.4, 1.5. And we are going up. Now, the question being is the density, if the developer comes in and builds at just an SR1 designation, which he can do that now, it's going to be 12, 15 lots less. We'll have less say, so to speak. But we're still going to have to understand that that ratio, even if he builds at SR1, is going to be somewhere, probably what, in the 2.4, 2.5 range?
2.57.
2.57. So that's what we're looking at, apples for apples. But I do believe that there are some concerns here, just from my standpoint. Now, One other question. Mr. Barrett, I think, asked this question. Can you explain to us about this connector? Is all the land acquired for the, can you explain that real quick?
Marshall, do you want to,
Marshall?
about the connector, the short piece?
Mr. Barrett, you spoke earlier, is correct. I don't believe the property owners have been approached about acquiring that property. But our hope, our hope is that for a typical development, we require on-street improvements for frontage. And we've always required that. And our hope is that in exchange for those improvements to East and Indian Lake, we would then in turn have the developer make the connection to Berry Hill. It'd be a even, close to an even swap to build that road. But that's the hope.
As of tonight, in considering this submittal, there's not been any discussions with anybody on that, so we really,
That's correct.
it's in limbo.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
It is.
All right. Okay, other commissioners?
Yeah. I have a question. I think there has been reference to a meeting with property owners maybe on June the 28th.
It was a neighborhood meeting, yes.
A neighborhood meeting. Have there been other meetings before, or I don't suppose there have been any meetings since then? Certainly for a development of this nature, and as you can determine by the attendance here tonight, how important this is to so many different people. And communication is so vitally important as we begin considering any sort of change. Is this the only meeting that's been held?
So one of the things we wanted to make sure that we did is we wanted to have a neighborhood meeting, which we did. We also wanted to make sure we got through staff comments and adjustments to those staff comments, because I did not want to have a meeting with something that might change and potentially have neighbors thinking they were getting one thing and something else were to come through. Between that time period, which was June 28th, and I believe we got, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we got comments back the Wednesday or Thursday before that, that we went through. We had arrangements set up for the Island Peninsula Church, I think. Anyhow, for the church, the dates they gave us were Mondays or Wednesdays. I felt that there was not time to give people time on a Monday, so we held it on that Wednesday. With the holiday and then with this public hearing, there really wasn't time to have another meeting. So yes, we've had that meeting. We've had conversations with staff, but that was the neighborhood meeting. And again, we wanted to have that meeting when we had as close to what you were going to see as we possibly could, so that they were seeing exactly the same thing that you were seeing.
I'm assuming that some of the comments that we've heard tonight are the same comments that were made at that neighborhood meeting?
They were very similar. We were at that meeting. I've had, if you will, offline conversations, emails and phone calls with about a dozen of the people in the area to talk through some of these issues. So there have been those, and we did tell people to feel free to talk to us, and they took me up on it, and that was fine.
Well, in consideration of the comments that were received, have there been any changes to your plan as a result of the comments or the communication that you've had from the community?
So there were a number of comments that came out of that, out of those neighborhood meetings. There were a number of people who quite honestly did not want Berry Hill to go forward and to go through. We did not make a change in that because, well, it's on your major thoroughfare plan, and that was a city requirement that we go ahead and do that. We went through, as I told you, Gresham Smith is a very large engineering and architecture firm. We do a great deal of traffic engineering and traffic planning work. I wanted to make sure that when we sat up here and said we've looked at the traffic and the traffic impact, that somebody didn't say, well, you're doing this development so we got a third party to take a look at this and do the traffic study, so that that was being done completely independently.
Has that information been provided to this commission or to the, or
It has
to the
been
staff?
provided to the city.
We commissioners have not seen the traffic study. Or the summary? Okay, but it has been provided.
It has been done and provided to the city.
Okay.
And I think in a digital format as well, if I'm correct.
Okay.
I only talked to them literally before they were ready to finalize it, and to be quite honest, they were recommending fewer improvements than I was planning on, so I asked them to increase what they were asking for, because I felt it was the right thing to do. In terms of what needs to happen here and how Berry Hill needs to go through. As I said, we have looked in general at what would have to happen to that intersection. Until I have a little more definitive answer as to, from all of you, it impacts where those lots are, which impacts where that road is, and it kind of snowballs, and we end up, once again, being in a situation. What I've done in looking at it preliminarily, and I have talked to specifically the three neighbors, the one on what would be the southwest corner and the two on the southeast corner, and said they were both concerned that whatever happened here would cause them to lose some front yard. We've actually left, as you can see, I'm going to step away just for a minute to point. We've left extra room in that corner. It is my estimation, having done this a lot of times, that what is going to happen is Trail East is going to have to fade a little to the north. East will fade a little bit to the north. You know, in order to make a good intersection there, what I have told those people is I don't really see a way to do this that doesn't end up with you having more front yard.
One final issue, well, maybe not my final issue, but certainly another issue that I heard repeatedly tonight, and certainly is an issue in many areas in Hendersonville, is that of drainage. Water problems and drainage issues, and certainly we know part of that area has been plagued with that. And I know it is our policy in any sort of development, they cannot create additional water drainage that is not taken care of in this plan. You made some reference to possibly other things that you were doing that could address some of the current problems that some neighbors are having, as well as to address the drainage issues of this new development. Right. Certainly, we all know that whenever we develop property, it creates a considerable amount of runoff water.
Okay. So if, without getting too engineering-ish for you here, no matter what develops, the same amount of water falls from the sky. What we're doing in dealing with it is making sure that the runoff doesn't run off any faster. So that's the intent. That's why we've designed it the way we have. That's why we put that big swale along the road. That's why we've got this wetland in the corner. Flooding comes it's partially from the amount that falls from the sky. I can't affect that. But flooding also comes from what's called the time of concentration. If all the water shows up at the same place at the same time, you get flooding. If it gets spread out, it's much the same as if you get an inch of rain in 15 minutes, things will flood. If you get an inch of rain in a week, it won't.
Right.
All right. So we've designed it to slow that water down, to hold that water, and to meter it out in such a way that it should reduce that stuff. I only have 35 acres. I can't solve every drainage problem on the peninsula, but I can make sure that it doesn't get worse and probably will get better. There is one thing, if I could, before it gets forgotten, Mr. Jenkins had mentioned something on the garages. I just want to do two things real quick that relate to the letter or the staff comments. One of them was a comment, I believe, that when you do have front garages, that they're no more than 40%. We've looked at these. There are a number of different models. Right now, and some of this depends on what model people buy, to be real honest with you, the front garages represent anywhere from 37.5% to 43% of that front facade. So it's not everything is at that 40% or less, but probably on average. But again, that depends on what they want to buy. There's one other thing you want to mention real quick.
My name's Matt Dowdle. I'm with D.R. Horton. I appreciate all the residents coming out today. As Steve had mentioned, there's many reasons for the reasons that we came up with the layout we did. In order to obtain more open space, to add more open space in the corner on the 90-degree bend, to help with more stormwater drainage, to help the traffic at the intersection down at the southeast corner of the property, giving extra room in that corner until we get an actual design, a formal design. Then we can work with city staff, city engineer to come up with the best configuration for that intersection. In relation to the garages, we will be doing the 2 separate doors, the architectural doors. We'll be doing the enhanced architectural lighting, which is one of the comments in the sheet. One thing we are willing to look at is coming in with about approximately 50% of the garages to be side load. When we do that, I believe there's a second criteria, which relates to the percentage of facing garage. No, that's the first criteria, I'm sorry. The first criteria is the percentage of garage. So instead of 0, we'd like to look at 50, and that would potentially change the shape configuration of the open space, but we would still be able to maintain the open space. If we were to go with all side load, we would have to increase that, and we would lose that amount of open space, and we want to keep that open space for the project.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Lee. Any other commissioners? Darlene, Ms. Stringfellow.
I go to church at it's Indian Lake Peninsula Church, and several years ago it flooded when Berry Hill was being built. So it hasn't flooded since, but what's going to keep it from flooding again to put all those homes on that other side?
Okay.
It flooded the church, not just the parking lot.
Okay. This property is downhill from there, so this water drains away from it.
No, it's...
So this property basically drains in 2 directions. There's a small drainage way that drains down here. There's a drainage way that drains in this direction towards that southwest corner. We've gone out and surveyed it. I don't really have drainage going towards the church. But again, the drainage will be addressed. Okay. Now, just to make sure we're on the same page, Mr. Jenkins, going to the 50% side-loaded garages, those will not have the bigger front yards. Those will have the regular 20-foot front yards. It's just a matter of geometry as to how that fits in there.
Thank you very much. Any other commissioners? Ms. Pirelli.
Thank you, Chairman Jenkins. So I guess some of my biggest concerns are regarding the context of the houses that are proposed, the elevations. I live on the other peninsula, so I'm on Peninsula 1. I'm going to call y'all Peninsula 2. And what we have seen on Peninsula 1 is where you've had these little pockets carved out with what I would call, and I mean no offense by this, but kind of 90s style homes with mission style accents. You've got neighbors here, you've got a whole peninsula, or a high percentage of this peninsula with mid-century ranches. And when you start talking about folks and neighbors interacting with each other, you're not actually going to see that on a smaller lot. Because when people have smaller pieces of property, they tend to turn in on themselves because they're looking for that space to have their personal space. So regarding the statement of the front-loading garages creates more interaction with neighbors. I think, you know, that you have to see if that's going to happen. On my peninsula, that hasn't happened. Regarding the roads, and I realize that, you know, Mr. Barrett's property is not purchased, or we don't know the standing of that. This long, winding arterial road is of great concern to me. We have a lot of those on this peninsula and also on my peninsula, going through subdivisions just like this. And what has happened is they have turned into racetracks because the roads are so long, because there's no right angles to create a forced stop. And I've spoken at length to our Public Works Director and our Public Works Committee, our Public Safety Committee. We've tried all kinds of things. We've tried the perception of narrowing roads. We've put in rumble strips. We've thought about putting islands in, and nothing has slowed down that perceived runway strip, so much so that somebody died last year on my peninsula, partially because of this long winding road. So also in regards to the runoff, and I understand what you're saying about, you know, trying to create green space with this wetland, but when you're looking, and I realize that you are legally allowed to have the 75, you know, 100 square foot lot size, but when you look at the impervious surface ratio of this layout, that water's got to go somewhere. You're looking at roofs and it's just shooting off, it's hitting the driveway, and it's hitting the streets. And I don't care how many blockades you put in, that water's going to go somewhere, and it's going to go downhill, and it's going to go onto other neighbors' properties. I commend you for coming up with some type of a damming system to stop it, but I think Hendersonville, do you live in Hendersonville?
I do not, I live in Nashville.
Okay, so Hendersonville is kind of at a point where, based on the feedback that I've gotten from citizens, that we've had all this development over the last 10, 20 years. And obviously you can see that folks are concerned about green space, runoff, and space, meaning personal space. Where I grew up, similar to where these folks live, they've grown up on quarter-acre, half-acre, acre lots. So they have that space and that sense of community. I would love to see a developer come in and be really brave and design in context of the mid-century ranch. If you live in Nashville, you know that is the trend. People are gobbling up ranch houses and renovating them and getting top dollar for them. I realize that the bottom line goes down when you start creating bigger lot sizes of a half an acre to an acre. But maybe, you know, when you're looking at 2,000 square feet to 3,300 square feet, you know, 2,000 square feet is the size of a typical ranch house. I mean, if that's what you're going to go with. So I say all that to say, keep in mind the context of the neighborhoods. I think people have grown tired of having something literally just plopped in that has no contextual elements to the surrounding area, an area where people have lived for over 50 years. But anyway, I appreciate your time and listening to my comments, and I do hope that you take into consideration the concerns of the neighborhood. I am very concerned about the aesthetics of these houses, though. I find them displeasing.
So I will mention the one thing, we did look at.
Please. Go ahead.
We did look at putting in an even sharper, literally a right angle. That didn't quite fit with what your thoroughfare plan was requiring. In effect, that could be done, but that's not per what your plan. So we've tried to work within your plan and your rules and your boundaries in putting this in coming up with a good, safe way to do what we've done. So we've tried to do that on purpose. I appreciate that if we were to put in a right angle, it would change things even more. But that doesn't quite fit with what some of your planning documents that have been around for quite a while suggest we should do.
I have found that if there was enough concern raised about the design of the roads, that our city employees who are very capable in our planning department, public works, and our engineers are very pliable and open to making any project in Hendersonville the best that it can be. So that's something that you're concerned about based on the feedback of citizens.
Right.
I could make it a priority that they're concerned.
And we can certainly turn that, especially as Stewart comes in there, we can certainly turn that into a, basically a T intersection.
Ms. Pirelli, anything else? Okay. Ms. Ashley?
I just have a basic question, very simple answer, please.
I'm a planner, I don't know that I can do that.
You can. So what are you entitled to do today, and what are the changes that you're recommending? I know we're basically talking only about 15 lots.
Correct.
But what else are you delivering to these folks for the development?
Okay. If we just did it as is, you wouldn't necessarily have the requirement, at least, for brick homes, stone homes, things like that. You wouldn't necessarily have the requirements or, for splitting the front-loaded garages, for the architectural grade garage doors, for the nicer garage doors. You wouldn't have the commitment to make some of them side entry, as you heard this evening. You wouldn't have the open space. Or some of the landscaping. There would probably still have to be a road improvement.
Okay.
It wouldn't be as nice, but there would be, there would certainly still be a road. There wouldn't be street trees. There wouldn't be some of the architectural lighting and other such niceties, if you will.
What would be the price differential in the homes? Oh, no, don't laugh.
No, there's a lot
that's
that goes...
a legitimate question.
Yeah, no, I understand it's a legitimate question. There's a lot that goes into those things.
I understand. I was in residential construction for 30 years, so
Yeah,
yes.
no, and it comes down to, as you know, it comes down to the cost of those lots, what has to go into it. It would, but, these are not, as I said, these are not cheap homes.
It doesn't feel like this group of people that's here feels like what you're doing is an improvement. So I think you have to somehow talk to us and maybe them about how this is going to improve the community.
I appreciate that. Like I said, I think we have tried to make these nicer.
Okay.
Certainly, as D.O. Hurton had mentioned, there is some ability to work on those facades and to adjust some of that architecture. Probably not necessarily to go to mid-century ranches, but if you think it looks too much like something or other, that there is some ability to adjust that.
I was going to say, we do have other product that we can utilize. Me not being on the architecture construction side, on the land side, but we can regroup, get back with our different departments and find those other products that might be a little more fitting to the neighborhood. We can definitely do that.
I guess that's my first concern, is that this isn't a product. This is where people are going to live. So we're
Right.
looking at something that needs to, relate that. And I understand the terminology, but I'm just saying this is a very personal, and it's not just this area, it's other areas. We'd just like to see the absolute best that something can be, given the impact, the big impact it's going to have on our city.
And we can definitely, as I said, with those homes, find some other models of the homes, look at the side entry, look at some of the architectural features, and determine what might be a little more fitting for the neighborhood in the area. We can do that.
That would be great.
Okay, Mr. Millsaps.
Mr. Chairman, I'm reminded of a saying that a man very close to me said one time, that the human mind could only absorb what the human seat can endure. We've been at it for 2 hours and 10 minutes. And I don't think there's any mistaking what the temperament of the citizenry is, at least as represented in this room. Everybody has an opportunity to participate. We certainly don't get involved in who gets on the speaker's list. That's for you to do, and I commend my colleagues for their endurance and for the constructive questions and probing that the colleagues on this commission have done. I'm going to cut to the chase. I think I have seen no compelling reason, Mr. Chairman and colleagues, presented to us by the developer that would justify us negating 3 years of work on the zoning regulations of our city and do anything other than to deny this request. And please, thank you. We are hearing more and more from our fellow citizens wondering about, basically the question simply goes down to how much more of the chaos can we endure? And I think we have long since come to the point, and I want to make a motion, Mr. Chairman, if I don't want to cut off debate, but I move that this recommendation, request to change the zoning of the Beatty Farm, that it be denied.
I second that motion, Mr. Chairman.
We have a motion and a second. No. We have a motion and a second on the floor, and now we'll go for discussion among the commissioners. Mr. Freed?
Mr. Chairman, if there is a denial or other action, then need to consider the findings of fact in denying, in this specific instance, in denying it. So item number 2 on the staff comments, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4. Those are the findings of fact that you'd need to consider, whether approving or denying the application. So with if it was denied, then stating one of those findings of fact, the only the finding of fact that it could be any of those, but at least needs to be one of those.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Free. And I think, to be clear, some commissioners will probably speak to some of those findings of fact. Are there any commissioners that wish to speak on the motion?
Yes, I would say that certainly item number 2 is a prevailing item that we have heard tonight for reason for denial. I would also say that I've become increasingly concerned about our lack of revenue to do the improvements that need to be done and not know what that amount would be. We're talking about, if we use the last one as an example, the $1,125, that's about 1/3 of 1% of a cost of what we're talking about of a home that's being developed, and certainly an impact fee or a similar fee of a 1% or 2%. That's where we need to be able to get the sort of revenue that we need to make our roads the way they need to be, to address the drainage problems proactively, and we're not there, and we would not be doing our due diligence to continue to approve until we have some of these things settled.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. Are there any other commissioners? Okay, hearing none, let me just weigh in and say that everything that Commissioner Lee has spoken and Commissioner Millsaps has spoken is true. Ms. Pirelli brought up some really good comments about the particular aesthetics. Drainage issues have been looked at. But for this commissioner, you know, I've been sitting on this commission a long time, and the whole time, it's not the plan itself. I think the plan has merit. But it's just simply that for what we're going to get in return for what this is going to bring in, along with the outcry of the community, also having the just the common sense to know that aldermen from both areas have weighed in on this, and that this recommendation would go forward to our other body. I'm inclined to say that I'm in agreement with this motion, and that it's not to say that that this could not be brought back up at another time, but I am just not compelled as one commissioner here to somehow go against this motion that's been presented. And with that, I see no other in the queue. I would make one more note. You'll recall that we started out this session with 8 commissioners present. We have 9 on the board. 2 of them have recused themselves, which brings us down to 6. So therefore, for any motion to do anything, we will need 4 votes tonight. So that's what we're going to do. So we have a motion and a second on the floor for a recommendation to deny. Am I stating that properly?
Yes.
Okay, and for the reasons of items number 2 on the findings of fact. Okay? We have that before us. We have a motion, a second. Hearing no other comments, we'll take a vote now. All in favor of the motion to deny, would you please say aye?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries and is so ordered. The motion is denied. Let me restate that. The motion is carried to recommend denial. Now then, if
Mr. Chairman.
If folks could withhold just a second. Mr. Rogers.
Okay, just to be sure everyone understands where we go from here, the applicant has an opportunity to carry this forward to the board, or he may elect to withdraw and back up and prepare another plan and bring it back before this body at some later date. But if he does choose to carry this plan forward with this negative recommendation, that would first go to the General Committee of the Board of Mayor and Aldermen, which would be on the second Tuesday of next month. And then from there to the Board of Mayor and Aldermen on the fourth Tuesday of next month.
Thank you, Mr. Rogers. Now, if everybody just withhold, we're almost done here. We've got one more item to take care of, and that'll keep us going really quickly. Yeah, we've gone with item number 8, and we're moving down now. There's no site plans, no sketch plats, no preliminary plats. We've dealt with rezoning requests, staff-approved projects, item number 13, Moby Dick's Canopy Addition site plan, and Zoe's Kitchen among. We don't need to take any action on that. So we're good. There's no other. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
A motion by Millsap, second. Second by Ashley. We are adjourned.